Okay, everybody. Welcome to our December SABR meeting. I must say that unfortunately the traffic tonight was pretty bad. It took us an hour and a half to get here from Kingwood. That gives you an idea. So there'll be some late arrivals, I'm sure. We're glad you're all here for our last meeting this year. We're also glad to welcome William Jenkins. And who is or will be a new member of SABR shortly. He does research and things like that. So just right up our alley, just what we need.
It's just I can hear you as you talk. I can't.
Don't worry about it.
Okay. David Gerald is on also here tonight, which we're thrilled to have David with us. David, as you know, is writing the book, or maybe had finished writing the book about Bill Byrne. He was on with us in May when we had Bill Byrne with us. And I don't know if anyone's contacted you, David, about the possibility of writing something for our newsletter about Bill. If that has some interest, we would love to have an article, 600, 700, 800 words, something like that, about Bill, as a former Astros manager.
I would love to do that. No one's contacted me, but I would like to do that.
Okay. Well, Tony Cavender is our editor. He's here tonight, and he'll be glad to contact you. And when will the book be ready?
Well, the publisher's had it since October. I did a preface. They forgot to tell me about a preface, and I did it in like 3 days, and they approved it. And then I read it to Bill the day before he passed away, and he liked it, him and Shirley both. And then on the day of his, the day that he passed away, the next day, I went home and wrote an epilogue for the book, kind of talk about his final days, and the publisher accepted that. So I'm just waiting on the final edit copy so I can have the final page numbers so I can complete the index. And the index shouldn't take me long because I've already started building the index. Okay. So to answer your question, I like to think that the book's going to be out by at least late spring.
Well, please let us know, because there are a number of people right here in this room and throughout the Houston area who would like to be able to have a copy of it and buy it through you. And maybe we get an autographed copy if possible.
Well, I'd like to do a book signing down there.
Excellent. We would welcome you to our meeting.
Tal Smith and I talked about doing a book signing in the Houston area.
Okay, great. Well, Tal's not here this minute. He promises me he'll be here about 8 o'clock. He had a previous commitment, but that's great. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Dick Biley. Dick's listed as Joy up there.
Well, that's who my computer expert is.
We're glad to have him. I told Dick the other day that since he used to be one of our most loyal members, and we wanted to get him to more meetings, so that we were thinking about nominating him for president of our organization. That's what I got out of Dick. Bang, bang, good laugh. But we're glad you're with us, Dick. Hope you're enjoying Tampa, the Tampa area.
It looks like they've redecorated the place.
Yeah, yeah. Christmas time. And Peter's on there. Is on our meeting today too. He spoke to us not too long ago. We're going to talk a little about our reorganization, our succession plan. Yeah. Last time I attended, Maureen and I got very. Oh, congratulations! Excellent. Thank you. Another member of SABR. We love it. We're expanding. We'll talk about membership and some other things in a few minutes, but I want to get around to our key speaker tonight. Maybe Jack Bales. Jack is the humanities librarian emeritus at the University of Mary Washington in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Jack retired after 40 years of doing research for the library. He's published a number of publications and journals, baseball and other subjects. And he's going to talk to us tonight about his book, The Chicago Cub Shot for Love, a showgirl's crime of passion in the 1932 World Series. And he's spoken to several chapters about his book, and we're so happy to have you with us, Jack. I'm going to turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, to share my screen then? I'm all set to go with that?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'll do that. And here we go. I'm all set here. And share. There we go. Okay, let me get on the full size here. And we'll be good to go. There we go. All right. Thanks, everybody, for having me here. I really appreciate being able to talk about what I think is not only a fascinating baseball story, but about the 1932 Chicago Cubs, but it's just a great tale of a true crime intrigue. It's topped off with dozens of contemporary photographs, some of them which have never been published before. So, so sit back and relax, because this is really an entertaining story, and you'll just get a real big kick out of it, I assure you. So just 1 second here. Okay, let me start with September 20th, 1932, and the Cubs had just clinched the National League pennant with a record of 90 wins and 64 losses, and 4 games in front of the second place Pittsburgh Pirates. Now, the Chicago Daily Tribune was rather stunned by these accomplishments, as the Cubs had to deal with quite a few major setbacks during the season. And early on, it was thought, for example, that there was little pitching besides Charlie Root and Pat Malone, but they had Lon Warnke, who had been a rookie in 1931, but had a 2.38 ERA in 1932. Team president William Beck was always worried about something, and he wondered about the outfield, as Hack Wilson had been traded, but then Johnny Moore stepped up, and he had 308 that year. And the Tribune reported in this article right here that, quote, never before was a team beset with more irritating experiences apart from the playing of baseball. For example, a big one was the obvious bad blood between William Beck, and the father, of course, of Bill Beck, as in Beck is in Rec. The obvious bad blood between William Beck and the team's talented but thoroughly disagreeable manager, Rogers Hornsby. The Sporting News points out right here that the Cubs season provided them with, it says here, a succession of varied thrills. And tops on the list of both the Tribune and the Sporting News was the July 6th shooting of their star shortstop, Billy Jurges, as reported here, and in an episode of Unrequited Love. So now, the sensational shooting of a popular baseball player by his former lover, Popovich, immediately captured the public's attention, as you can see here by these headlines. And everybody wanted to know what exactly had happened in room 509 of the Chicago's Hotel Carlos on Sheffield Avenue, just a couple of blocks north of Wrigley Field. And just a few hours after the reporters first heard the news, the Daily News, the Daily Illustrated Times was hot on the street with these banner headlines. The Associated Press carried the news across the country, reporting that, quote, a woman scorned almost took the life of Bill Jurges, star shortstop of the Chicago National Baseball Club. Now, while working on a previous book, this book right here to the left, I read about the shooting incident in a few Cubs histories, but the authors provided little information besides a few cursory comments. It says, I felt that the story made the Cubs season particularly intriguing. I set out to find additional details about the dramatic confrontation in Billy Jurges's hotel room. And information about Billy seemed readily available. I had material from the Hall of Fame. I went to a lot of Chicago libraries. online database. I'm a retired librarian. We have lots of databases, and I found quite a few things. SABR sources, of course. Well, what about Violet's family? You know, her childhood, her family. What did she do after life, after with her life after the excitement and died down with the shooting? And newspapers turned to other stories. And of course, what happened to the Cubs and the rest of their season? A season made famous, as you all know, by Babe Ruth and his famous call shot during the Cubs Yankees World Series. So there was a lot for me to research here. Newspaper articles provided both day-by-day coverage and interviews with Billy, Violet, and a lot of other people important to the whole incident, such as the baseball players that found him in his hotel room, the judge at the time, lots of other people. In fact, I went through every single Chicago newspaper on microfilm, page by page. Some Tribune was available online, but not too many others were available online for this time period of 1932. So I went through them all. It took me about 8 years, I guess. You know, I was still working at the time, and I just camped out of my library when we were closed and went through reel upon reel of microfilm. Also, these court records were really invaluable, as Violet's father was physically abusive to his wife. There was a long, drawn-out divorce in which 8-year-old Violet had to testify. So imagine what she went through. And also, I was able to interview and correspond with Billy Jurges family members, the Popovich family members, especially our nephew, both their nephews, and they gave me lots of good material, as did Billy's daughter and his grandson. I still stay in touch with the grandson, in fact. So today, I want to talk about the shooting of Billy by his former girlfriend, her court hearing, and a few more details about Violet's life, including her early, rather unhappy years, as you might imagine. I'll discuss the 1932 Chicago Cubs, profile of Billy's life, and then sum everything up. And along the way, I'm going to show you a few photographs, including some family photographs of Violet that are in my book and which never before been published. So, okay, as I said, on July 1, 1932, the Cubs were in first place in the National League and were in the thick of a tight pennant race, and contributing to the Cubs' success was their star shortstop, 24-year-old Billy Jurges. Well, 21-year-old Violet Popovich would soon put a stop to that. Just a few days later, and Billy and a few other Cubs were staying at the Hotel Carlos, just a couple of blocks north of Wrigley Field on Sheffield Avenue. And here it is right over here. And on the morning of July 6th, Billy was getting ready for a game with the Philadelphia Phillies. And the Cubs were now unfortunately in third place, 3 games behind the Pirates. And about 9:45 in the morning, Violet called him from her room 109. She was staying there too. It was like a residential hotel, or excuse me, room 111. She said she wanted to see them. And he told her to come on up. And about 10:15, she knocked on his door, room 509. And by the way, his room 509 was on the top floor, facing the street here, all the way to the far right. That was his room right over here. Excuse me. They had been going out for about a year, but he had recently called things off, and they had a big argument. She wanted to talk about it. They ended up arguing some more. She asked him for a glass of water, and he left the room to get it, which was a bad move on Billy's part. And here's exactly what had happened. He was getting the room, getting the glass of water, came back out of the room, the bathroom, I guess it was. She pulled a small caliber revolver from her purse. And the New York Times reported that he, quote, made a wild lunge for the gun. And in the ensuing struggle, as they say in the movies, 3 shots rang out. Here's where they went. One bullet struck him on the right side, bounced off a rib, and went out his right shoulder. In fact, bouncing off that rib undoubtedly saved his life, the doctor said. Another bullet hit him, grazed a little finger of his left hand. The third bullet hit Violet in her left hand, about the base of her thumb, went up about 6 inches. As luck would have it, the Cubs doctor, John C. Davis, was on hand. He patched them both up, and they were both treated at a local hospital. These are all photographs from my collection, by the way. All of them are original wire photos. The Chicago Cub newspapers, by the way, pounced on this story. And as they say nowadays, it went viral. It was also somewhat sensational. I mean, the newspapers, as you might imagine, played this up big. You know, Violet was the quote, the dark-haired former chorus girl. She was, quote, the pretty gun toter. She was a 21-year-old comely brunette. And she was also the, quote, raven-tressed beauty. She stayed in the Illinois Masonic Hospital for a couple of days, and here she is leaving for the Bridewell Hospital right next to the Cook County Jail. She was booked on a charge of assault with intent to kill, and note that her left arm here is still bandaged. Now, in the meantime, the police searched her hotel room, found a couple of bottles of liquor, of alcohol, and found these two photographs were there. They also found a note addressed to her brother, Michael, in which she said, quote, to me, life without Billy isn't worth living, but why should I leave this earth alone? I'm going to take Billy with me. Or rather foreboding right there. She later said that the note was a result of, quote, too much gin, and that she only wanted to kill herself to make Bill sorry for breaking up with her. She said in an interview that when Billy was out of the room getting her that glass of water, quote, I pulled out my revolver intending to kill myself. Bill saw me and grabbed the gun. We fought for it. We really fought for it. The gun kept exploding. I didn't want to hurt him, unquote. Violet made the newspapers almost daily, particularly on July 15th, 1932, the day of her arraignment. I love this photograph. I have the original of this photograph. I have the original negative. A grizzled old newspaper reporter found it in his files and gave it to me. The original negative, the original yellow, brown yellow sleeve, one of those 4x4 negatives with the names of her attorneys, never been published before, never been published in any newspaper, I should say. And I absolutely love it. It's the only full body shot of her in existence at that time. Note that she still has the bandage. By the way, I did this for the Chicago chapter, and one of the members said, well, you know, Herbert G. Immenhausen and James Burke, they were big guns at that time. And how did she afford him? And how did she afford them? And I have to admit, I don't really know. And it never came up in any of the newspapers. I know her church, the St. Paul's Lutheran Church, paid for her bail bondsman, but I don't know who paid for her lawyer fee. But anyway, this was the Chicago American said that when she entered the courtroom with her attorneys, quote, the crowd gasped at her radiant beauty. The Daily Illustrated Times wrote that she was, quote, a symphony in red and white with her red earrings, her red shoes, and her red striped trimmings on her red striped white crepe sports dress, exactly matching her shade of lipstick. It's my favorite photograph in the whole book. The judge, John SABR, was not only an attorney and judge, but he's also the ultimate political fixer. As a biographer of Al Capone said, the judge was on the take when he was not putting, he ran a mortuary favored by Chicago's mobsters. He used this garage as, by the way, as a drop-off spot for bootleg gin. And when Jonathan Eig, biographer of Al Capone, said, quote, he was on the take when he was not putting gangsters in coffins, or when he was not putting them in jail, he was putting them in coffins. In fact, he was also a Cubs fan. He asked Billy before the trial, Billy, what do you want me to do here? And he just said, I want to get it out. I want to get it over with. I want to get out of my life. Let's just let her go. And that's exactly what happened. Billy, the Cubs, the judge, they all wanted this to quietly go away. So Billy refused to press charges. And I have part of the transcript of the trial in my book. And the judge dismissed everything. And here they are at trial, right over here. Note that Billy is hiding his face from he isn't blowing his nose. He is hiding his face from photographers. The place was packed. There's Violet looking at one of her two attorneys there. The courtroom was packed with Violet's former showgirl friends. Baseball players are in there. A curious crowd was in there. Everybody wanted to see what was going on. This is my second favorite photograph in the book, by the way, as you might imagine. I love this. It's on the cover of the book too. Now this was July 15th. Now, Billy got shot on July 15th after 3 bullets in him. He's well enough to be here at the arraignment on July 15th. On July 22nd, Billy felt well enough to take the field in a game against the Pittsburgh Pirates. He played third base instead of shortstop because he'd have less stretching to do. The Cubs lost 3-1, but as one newspaper reported, quote, Billy Jurges, a celebrated revolver target, bowed himself back into his profession by socking a single to center. Okay, now we're getting into the good stuff here. Violet Valley, the girl who shot for love, she billed herself in the Bear Cub Follies. Okay, on the day of her arraignment, Violet met with the reporters and said, she told them, I owe it to my self-respect to get on with my life. I'm just not going to see Billy anymore. I'm going to stay home with my mother and stay home for a while. And, well, that didn't last too long. Let's see, it was on July 15th was the day, 16th was the day of her arraignment. Okay. And soon after that, she made plans to sign Billy may not have signed a complaint, but Violet signed a contract to perform as a singer under her stage name, Violet Valley, in a show called the Bear Cub Follies in a rather sleazy burlesque theater called the Chicago State Congress Theater. The whole area there near State Street was full of these burlesque clubs. As you can see, this one on the right is called Chicago's Greatest Burlesque, but it was known for its very seedy, rundown rooming houses, hotels, dingy saloons, pool halls, and burlesque theaters. Interestingly enough, on the same day, newspapers reported on Billy's return to the baseball field. Violet returned to the stage on that same day. Management did its part to attract an audience by booking some Bear Cub girls as her opening act. This is one of the things I found by going through the newspapers page by page. I love this illustration. It's in my book. This is like a quarter-page ad in the Chicago Record and Examiner. I was fortunate enough to find a detailed review of her show in the Chicago Daily News, which also discussed exactly what went on in her burlesque show. The review was written by a guy named Lloyd Lewis, a very well-known editor of the time. He was an amateur historian. He wrote a book on the Civil War. He hobnobbed with Sinclair Lewis, the novelist. He also, let's see, Sinclair Lewis, Carl Sandburg, the historian Carl Sandburg. And he lived in a house on the Des Plaines River designed by his buddy Frank Lloyd Wright, which is now a National Historic Site. He wrote a detailed review of Violet's act, which was one of my main things I always wanted to find was a detailed review. She was a singer. She did not take her clothes off as people hoped she would, as pointed out in the review. And Lloyd Lewis pointed out that all about what went on in the strip show. And he said that the degree of nudity depended upon the amount of applause each Bear Cub girl received. The greater the applause, the more removal of the clothes. In fact, I liked the review so much, I reprinted the whole thing. He talked about Violet's performance too. Now, this is supposed to run for about 6 weeks or so, but I noticed in the papers, it didn't last long at all. It's supposed to travel the burlesque circuit. It didn't. And Violet's nephew, I asked him about this. And he said that her lack of success may have stemmed from her lack of talent. Quote, she liked to sing, he told me. That is, she tried to sing. She had other problems. Here she got back in the news and Judge John Sabarbara's courtroom after a bail bondsman, a part-time real estate agent and a full-time con man and hustler. He stole her Billy Jurges love letters. There's some Kai Collar love letters in there too, who was married at the time, by the way. She dated him until she found out he was married. Then she dropped him. He stole the love letters. He wanted to publish them and sell them in ballparks around the country under the title Love Letters of a Shortstop. Judge SABR suspected a con was going on because, how could these letters sell many copies? He promised Violet $25,000, but what he really wanted to do was blackmail Billy, which was a scheme that did not work at all. And so Billy, she eventually got her love letters back, and she was soon back on the stage singing in the Kitty Davis Cocktail Lounge here in Chicago, singing sentimental love songs. She was also seeing this young man here named Fred Williams, who worked in the office of his father's hardware factory. They applied for a marriage license. They never did get married, though. And by 1940, Violet and her mother were living in they moved from Chicago and were living in Los Angeles. I love this photograph, by the way. This is one of my favorite photographs of her. She looks so sweet, innocent. Who would have known? Who would have thunk it that a few years later she'd be packing heat in her purse and going to see Billy in a hotel room? But anyway, a few years ago, Violet's nephew, Mark Prescott, the son of her brother, Mark, learned of my research and he contacted me. He offered family photographs and personal insights. And with some more research, additional details emerged about the sad, strange saga of Violet Popovich. And here was her father, Mirko Popovich, who was an Austrian immigrant who arrived at Ellis Island in 1907. He was an electrician by trade, and he moved to Chicago. And in 1910, he married, keep an eye on the time here. He moved to Chicago and he married Margaret Heindel, also from Austria. And they had 4 children, of which Violet was the oldest, born in 1911. Now, the marriage was not a happy one at all. When Violet was only 10 days old, her father began beating her mother, his wife, giving her black and blue eyes as she testified in court. And they got divorced in 1920 on the grounds of extreme and repeated cruelty. In fact, as I said, Violet had to testify at the divorce hearing. Child support was very slow in coming. And despite Michael Popovich's steady income and the family, the 3 boys and Violet had to live at the Ulick orphanage, the Ulick Children's Home in Chicago. I went through their records at the Chicago History Museum, the Chicago Historical Society, and got a lot of information about their lives there. It was run by the Lutheran Church, and there they are in front of it. Now, Violet said in interviews that she was married at a young age, but that it was a very short marriage. Quote, I was unhappily married at age 18, she said, one of those puppy love affairs with a schoolboy. I never lived with him, and we were divorced 6 months later. Right after her divorce, she enrolled in a dancing school. In the early 1930s, she joined the chorus of a Chicago production of Vanities, an annual musical produced by a well-known New York showman at the time, Earl Carroll, who at that time was famous for his elaborate shows and scantily clad showgirls. And the souvenir pamphlet shown here notes that the show was, quote, America's greatest review. And Earl Carroll's motto was, way down there at the bottom right of the red pamphlet there, was, through these portals past the most beautiful girls in the world. In the summer of 1931, she met Billy. As she said in an interview, quote, Bill is the boy and 100,000 for me. I met him at a party, and if it wasn't love at first sight, it was just about second. A year later, the two of them had their dramatic confrontation in Billy's hotel room. She sang at this burlesque show here at New Yorker's Vanities, the Chicago performance of Vanities. She sang in nightclubs in Chicago, and she eventually moved to Los Angeles. Okay, we'll continue with Violet, but let's get back to Billy and the Cubs for a little bit. And here's the Cubs infield at that time. From left to right, there's Woody English, third baseman Woody English, second baseman Billy Herman, later be a Hall of Famer. Charlie Grimm, the manager and first baseman there, and Stan Hack, also called Smiling Stan Hack, and Billy Jurges, the shortstop. Stan Hack was he shared second base for a while, and also Charlie Grimm was first baseman. Now, Billy rejoined the team, as I said, on July 22nd, and after their loss to Pittsburgh that day, they found themselves 3.5 games behind the league-leading Pittsburgh Pirates, and everyone was under a lot of stress. And on top of that, there are all these whispered comments within the Cubs organization about the obvious stress, obvious animosity, I should say, between Cubs president William Beck Sr. and the manager Rogers Hornsby. Now, Beck believed that the team was easily good enough to win the National League pennant. He was getting pretty darn sick and tired of Hornsby's constant complaining about the men and their alleged shortcomings. And the players, too, had little use for Hornsby. Quote, he was one of the greatest hitters of all time, maybe the greatest, says second baseman and future Hall of Famer Billy Herman, but he never talked hitting with us. He just expected us to go out there and do it. Things continued to get worse. The loss to the Brooklyn Dodgers on August 2nd put the Cubs 5 games behind the first place Pirates. And that evening, Beck fired Hornsby and appointed as manager the very popular first baseman and team captain, Charlie Grimm. And Grimm lived up to his nickname, Jolly Charlie, and the team flourished under his easygoing, even-tempered style. He also called himself the left-handed banjo player, as you can see here in his autobiography. Cub president William Beck was really concerned about Billy's recovery right after the shooting. Also, there was a loss of player manager Rogers Hornsby. He was in the infield too. So Beck brought in Mark Koenig to help out as shortstop. I hope that's how you pronounce it. I've seen it pronounced in several ways. To help out as shortstop, he needs to play with the New York Yankees. He proved to be an excellent choice as he helped the Cubs clinch the National League pennant. On September 20th, he batted .353 during 33 games he played with the Cubs from August 14th to the end of the season, September 25th. And he really helped the Cubs clinch the pennant there. And each team would get a share of the World Series gate receipts. And the players got to vote on who got how much money. And it had to be a unanimous choice to get a full share of the World Series money. And 2 players, Billy Herman and Bill Jurges, voted not to give Mark Koenig a full share because they say that he played in just the last part of the season, 33 games. The other players, I think Billy Jurges played in 153 maybe, I'm not sure. Instead, they voted him a half share. Now, the New York Yankees, Koenig's former team, and Chicago's World Series opponents did not see it that way. And when the newspapers announced the breakdown of the World Series money, the Yankees and Babe Ruth in particular blasted the Cubs as penny pitchers and cheapskates. I hope we beat them 4 straight, Babe Ruth said in an interview. They gave Koenig a sour deal on his player cut. They're chiselers, and I tell them so. That's an exact quote in a newspaper article. As famed Washington Post correspondent or sports writer Shirley Povich, by the way, the father of Maury Povich, the talk show host, he wrote, quote, "The Cubs' stinginess fired the Yankees to new heights," unquote. The Cubs were down 2-0 in the World Series when Game 3 was played in Chicago. And in the 5th inning, the score was tied 4-4. Ruth was at the plate facing pitcher Charlie Root, a very hard-nosed pitcher. The count was at 2 balls, 2 strikes, and Babe Ruth raised 2 fingers of his right hand. And did he signal that that was only 2 strikes? Did he gesture contemptuously to the Cubs dugout? Did he gesture contemptuously to Charlie Root? Did he point to center field as if to signal that he was going to hit a home run there to the outfield? That is, did he call his shot? All these things people thought. Well, what persons saw depended upon where they were sitting and the angle of the view. In fact, even the home movies taken at that time were of little help, according to Robert Kramer, who wrote the Babe Ruth biography. In any case, Babe Ruth did hit a home run, but what few people remember was that Lou Gehrig went up and he hit a home run too. The Cubs lost that game 7-5. They lost the World Series. They lost the following game 7-5. in the following game too, they lost. I can't remember the score, but the thoroughly demoralized Cubs lost. They did lose the whole World Series, 4-0. They didn't even win one single game. Just as Babe Ruth had hoped. He'd hoped that they'd beat them 4 games straight. Now, of course, whether Babe Ruth actually called his shot has been debated ever since October 1, 1932. There have been 2 books called The Called Shot. One of them came out just a couple of years ago by Thomas Wolfe. He talked about the called shot in great detail in his book. And I go into this in some detail, but one thing, opinions about whether he did or did not point, and I found this rather incredible, they do not fall along partisan lines. Pitcher Guy Bush was in the dugout there. He was Babe Ruth's principal heckler. He yelled at him to beat the band, all sorts of slurs, and he maintained all his life. Of course he pointed. I was there. I saw him point to the outfield. But then I saw Yankees. I read reports of Yankees, Frankie Crosetti. I saw an interview with Joe McCarthy. He said, "Oh yeah, that was a game in which Babe Ruth called a shot." He started saying, "Oh no, he didn't point. He didn't point at all. That was just made up." So I got him from both sides. Cubs players said he did not. I said he did. Yankees players said he did not. Of course, I got Yankees players said he did as well, and the Cubs player said he did not as well. Some Yankees players like Frankie Crosetti said that emphatically they did not, that it was just that they recognized early on that it was a great story. They decided to all keep quiet after Joe Williams of the New York World Telegram said Ruth called shot in his article on the game. And that's, of course, what started the whole thing from Joe Williams's report in the New York World Telegram. He said that they called it. And after that, other reporters picked it up. The wire services picked it up. And that's really kind of how it gained legs. Now, according to the hard-nosed Charlie Root, he said that if Ruth had tried to show him up by pointing out to the outfield, quote, "Anybody who knows me knows that Ruth would have ended up on his ass." But then Lou Gehrig would have been up with Babe Ruth on base. So I wonder if he actually really, would have done that. Anyway, Charlie Root, by the way, brooked no interference on this topic. He was offered a large sum to play Babe Ruth, to play himself in the movie The Babe Ruth Story, and he refused, saying, quote, "Not if you are going to show him pointing." During a Root family outing one day, and I saw this and found this in Root's biography, written by a SABR member, Roger Snell. During a Ruth picnic, during a Root family picnic, they were playing a game of wiffle ball, and Charlie Root was pitching, of course. Charlie Jr.'s wife was at bat, and she made the mistake of pointing her wiffle bat to the outfield. Bad move. Charlie wound up and nailed her right on the neck with the wiffle ball, knocking her to the ground. Said, "Don't do that." Right before he died, he told his daughter, "I gave my whole life to baseball, and I'll be remembered for something that never really happened." But as I say, and other people said, and I think Tim Wiles, the former research director of the Hall of Fame, said one time, I know in an interview, "But does it really matter? Whatever happened, only Babe Ruth and his charismatic presence could have transformed a few minutes of baseball into the stuff of American legend." As Charlie Grimm said later on, quote, "A great guy hit that homer, the greatest slugger of all time." I discuss the rest of Billy's career in my book, including his disastrous 1959 and 1960 seasons as manager of the Boston Red Sox. When you become a manager, Billy said, you have to have a team that is coming up. All my players on the Red Sox were finishing up their careers, and there wasn't much I could do here. Billy did his best, but he was let go in June 1960 with a disappointing major league managerial record of 59-63, a winning percentage of just 484. But he did finish his career as a really well-respected baseball scout and instructor. He quit the the baseball life in the early 1980s to take care of his ailing wife, Mary, who died in 1984. Several years later, Billy remarried, and as he put it, he and his wife Phyllis enjoyed the good life in Fargo, Fargo, Florida. Largo, Florida. I'm sorry. There was a park near his house. They play horseshoes. They dance. They play pinochle. They traveled together, and he would visit with ball players who lived nearby, like first baseman Phil Cavaretta. They socialized with former teammates at various baseball functions. Billy was not a powerful hitter, but he compensated for that with his solid defensive skills. During his 17 years in the major leagues from 1931 to 1947, he led the National League shortstops in fielding percentage 4 times, 1932, 35, 37, 39, and once in double plays turn, 1935. He batted .258 in 1,816 games and collected 1,613 hits. He said, "I've never failed to do my best to play out to the limit. Baseball has done well by me. I've done all I could for baseball." He was diagnosed with cancer in 1991. He entered the hospital in March 1997 and died a few weeks later on March 3rd at age 88. Let's finish up with Violet here. I love these 3 photographs. Violet, by 1990, Violet and her mother had settled in Los Angeles, as I said. Violet always considered herself a professional singer, and she had these photographs taken of herself to try to get back on the stage. I love the one of her in that cape, I guess it is, and the shorts. Unfortunately, despite all these glamour shots, she saw few opportunities for launching a West Coast singing career. She was a city person. In her 1947 marriage to Charlie Retzlaff, a prize fighter from Duluth, Minnesota, was probably doomed from the start. He was known as the Duluth Dynamiter. He was regarded as a good fighter until he met a young boxer named Joe Louis in 1936, who kind of knocked him out in the first round, and he kind of quit fighting soon after that. The marriage did not last long. They remained friends, and they did not divorce. They remained friends. I go into more about him and Violet's other relationships in my book. John Wayne, by the way, did not take his marriage vows too seriously. He met Violet at a club near where she worked at a film studio, and I picked her up, took her back home, and wanted to kind of spend the night, but Violet's mother was waiting up for Violet, and that kind of put the kibosh on his plans. Violet's nephew told me that story. She dated Leo DeRocher in the 1930s, Al Lopez in the 1960s. What other person can say, this is a great baseball trivial question, what person went out with 2 baseball Hall of Famers who were managers of the Cubs and the White Sox? Not at the same time, of course. But Al Lopez managed the White Sox, and DeRocher managed the Cubs in the night. Violet spent her final years in a nursing home. She did not have much money, but she made up for it with her upbeat attitude, her cheerful spirits. Just want to keep an eye on the time here. Okay. She regaled both residents of the nursing home and the staff with all these tales of her showgirl past. She died on February 25th and was buried in Los Angeles' Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills. She was 88 when she died in the year 2000, February 25th, just like Billy. Okay, wrapping things up here. I discussed it in my book. Like Violet, the Hotel Carlos had its share of rough times. Note the top here, the air conditioner here, with this dilapidated trim. There's some banged up stuff over here, these crummy looking blinds here. It was relatively new. I think it was built in either 1930, 1931. I couldn't tell it for sure, but right, it was pretty new when the Cubs were there in the 1932. But a real estate company purchased a hotel and completely remodeled it and called it the 3834 North Sheffield. On its homepage, they called it a once hip apartment hotel for Cubs players. Now it offered studio apartments for young professionals. And these photographs were taken just about a year or so ago by a friend of mine in Chicago. And Billy's room is still there on the top floor there in the upper right. And she went upstairs. My friend kind of went upstairs and took a couple of photographs of what the halls looked like over there too. And just one more thing. In 1949, 19-year-old Chicagoan Ruth Ann Steinhagen, who had, to quote the New York Times, a twisted fascination with former Cub and then Philadelphia Philly Eddie Waitkus, shot him in his room at the Chicago's Edgewater Beach Hotel. Ironically, Waitkus and Jurges had played together for 2 years, and Waitkus had hit a double, in fact, in Billy's last game on September 9th, 1947. So I can't help but think they must have compared notes with their two respective shootings. I would have loved to have found that out. I wish I had asked his daughter. In fact, I asked his daughter, did you know about this shooting? I mentioned this in my book. And she said, quote, I knew about it, but it was never mentioned at our house.
I'm on the Zoom.
Author Bernard Malaman never mentioned where he got
Go ahead. How were you?
the source material, but it seems likely that one or both of these shootings undoubtedly inspired him to include a passage in his 1952 novel, The Natural, in which a woman shoots ball player Roy Hobbs. The Natural and that scene continue to live on today, of course, because of the motion picture star in Robert Redford. And by the way, I tried to get a hold of Ruth Steinhagen just because I was interested in this shooting too, and I got all sorts of wire photos. She died in 2012. Her death largely went unnoticed for about 2 weeks before reporters finally caught on. I had her address, I had her phone number. I wrote her 3 times. She never wrote back. I didn't really expect her to. I had a self-addressed stamped envelope. Eddie Waitkus' biographer, he said in his book that he went to her house. I had a picture of her house. In fact, I went by, I did not stop, but he stopped and he talked to someone on the front porch, but didn't know whether it was Ruth or Ruth's sister because they both lived there. Anyway, here's wrapping things up. Here's my book with a foreword by Tim Wiles, the former research director at the Hall of Fame. If anybody buys it on Amazon or in fact, the publisher has it on for, I think, for $13 now on their homepage, on their webpage, the History Press. If anybody buys it, would like a special design signed book plate with featuring the cover of the book, just email me and I'll send them for free a signed book plate. There's my email address right there. But let me end this something of a light note. I've enjoyed research. I've enjoyed, excuse me, all this research and this writing a great deal. I want to end on a light note here. I had a great time immersing myself in all this primary source material, court records, all these newspaper articles. And some years ago, I decided to even Violet was a part of my life for like 8 years. And a few years ago, I wanted to make her part of my family too. I'm just kidding. So I decided to make Violet a part of my family Christmas card with me and my son and my daughter. So here she is on my family Christmas card. And note, my sister did all this for me. She's well versed in Photoshop. And note the image on the bandage there, the writing on the bandage, and on it she wrote, Violet, I hope you feel better soon. Go Cubs, Jack. Thank you very much. Let me stop my screen sharing here so I can get back here and see you all. And thanks again for having me here. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Any questions for Jack?
Well, I was wondering if this is based on The Natural, or The Natural is based on it. So,
Yeah.
I said,
Well, you know,
okay,
I worked into
I've
this.
seen this movie.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I get into this a little bit of my book, and SABR, well, I think it was a National Pastime, a SABR publication, had a big article about Bernard Malamud, and they said they tried to figure out, and he said that that Bernard Malamud never ever discussed the sources for for that book anyway. But the author says he can't help but think that one or the other or both of the shootings inspired him to include a passage in there in which the woman shoots ball player Roy Hobbs. I can't help but think. Now the book came out in 52, I think it was, or maybe 51, and Eddie was shot in 49. So, being a realist, I can't help but think that maybe the Eddie Wakefield shooting inspired him more than the Billy shooting. But who can tell for sure?
Okay.
Any other questions? Comments? Sure, Tony.
About whether or not Ruth called that home run or not, it was pointed out that in the next game they played against the Cubs when Ruth was as bad as the first time at bat and got hit. So when it comes to pitching Kitty,
I didn't know that.
an indication that they thought he was showboating it. And secondly, the Justice John Paul Stevens from Chicago attended that game. I think he always thought that Ruth called that shot.
Yeah. Well, funny you said. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, and lastly, we were talking, I guess, the last time about Babe Ruth, and he spent some time discussing this affair at a party where the columnist Walter Lippmann and his wife were in New York, and they were very genteel people, and Ruth was anything but genteel.
I know that. Yeah.
And she asked Ruth what happened, and then he explained what happened at that night in the most colorful 4-letter words.
Yeah.
So much so that Mrs. Walter Lippmann asked to be excused from the party.
Yeah. I remember reading about that too.
That was very interesting. Thank you.
Kennesaw Mountain Landis was at that game, and his son was at, or maybe it was I can't remember if it was his son or his nephew, but anyway, maybe it was a grandnephew. Is a man named Tim Landis, who was a student of mine at the University of Mary Washington. And so we got into a discussion about this because this guy, Tim, collects everything about Kennesaw Mountain Landis. And so we had a discussion on the phone. I did an article about him for our alumni magazine. And so he says, Jack, my father was there. He swore that he called the shot and everything. And I said, well, Tim, I got both sides here, but I'll believe your father. And his father, I saw an interview with his father in the New York Times. He said, I was there, I saw him point to the field. He called his shot, his father, I saw in the paper was most upset, of course, when they took Kennesaw Mountain Landis' name off the Most Valuable Player Award too. He said he was not a racist at all. I'm really upset about that. But it was interesting that I got to meet and talk to quite at length with the Kennesaw Mountain Landis. I guess it was his grandnephew, I think, who lives in Fairfax, Virginia, in Virginia someplace.
Yeah, I heard many stories about that. One of them, I guess the counter story is that somebody asked you where the wind's coming from, and he said, "What's coming from out there?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah. But I have a lot of endnotes in my book, and I cite the different places where I saw both sides of the issue and everything. And but just fascinating. Of course, as you well know, entire books have been written about this whole, this whole one game and everything. I guess it'll never die down either,
Right.
Zach, thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you guys for having me. Thank you all for having me.
We have
I love talking about it, and thank you so much for having me too.
we can tell that you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. Okay.
Very good.
All right.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit, and can I stay here? Or do I have to go?
You don't say what you want. Make this work.
Okay. Well, oh yeah, you see my bald spot.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've talked about in this chapter, I've been involved in this chapter for 19 years, 18 plus, so I got count 19. And our membership is paid pretty constant. And, but we need to grow. I'm not sure where the echo's coming from. One thing we've been concerned about is succession planning. Some of the other chapters have had some problems with chapters keeping going after the leaders have passed on. And so we, the board, met last Tuesday to make some decisions about going forward. Who will lead the chapter into the 2022. And I'm most pleased to announce, if you don't already know it, that Joe Thompson has been elected president of the Larry Dierker chapter. Larry, yay for Joe. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Joe has been the heart and soul of this chapter the last couple of years. He's been our social media director. He's been involved with lots of projects, and he's got a lot of good ideas. As you all know, he's on a college campus every day, and he's hoping that he can attract some younger people to our chapter and to SABR. So we're very happy about that. Our first vice president will be Herb Wally. Herb has been with the chapter for a number of years. We know his passion is old-time ballparks. He's toured a lot of them, and he's agreed to step up to be first vice president. Our next officer is, I'm looking at right now, is Chris Chestnut, who is our vice president of membership. Now, that encompasses a lot. Not only the name tags, but rosters and all that kind of good stuff. And keeping track of our members as they come and go. Question? Okay. Our next vice president is someone we all know and love. It's Mike McCroskey. And Mike's
Tom McCroskey.
yeah. He's our vice president of special projects, and he's taking over the project of vintage baseball. And we'll let him talk about that in a couple minutes. Our recording secretary will be continuing Marcia Franti, who's done a superior job through the last number of years reporting various items. In fact, she's taking notes right now, taking down what I'm saying word for word so she can report it. Hi, Marcia. As far as the Shooting Star Express newsletter, which has had 5 editions so far. It was a project that was started a year and a half ago. Of course, Tony Cavender will continue as editor of that publication with the able assistance of Scott McKay, who does a terrific job of outlining and designing. So I also want to thank Bob McCann and Tom Clemens, who were on the board and have retired at this point, but we do appreciate their help for the last couple of years.
Was, they didn't move 100 miles away.
You just know who that is. Okay. One thing I need to ask of everybody, and I'm going to stay on involved with the chapter also. I'm not leaving, but I'll be around. But we do need some volunteers for our vice presidents and the committees. There are a lot of things that this chapter needs to do going forward.
The thing you should have mentioned then, and it wasn't about.
That's Dick.
Hey, Dick. Can you mute him, Chris?
Chris, you can mute Dick. Yeah, Joy. Yeah, under Joy. Yeah, there he is. He's muted now. We have a great need to follow up on our members. We're getting members to join, but a lot of them are coming from outside of Texas. We need to welcome our new members, and we also need to call those folks who don't renew and find out, is there a problem? Is there something that we can do to make this a better program for them? But we need volunteers to come forward with special projects. Right now, we have the possibility of 3 special projects that the chapter can undertake. One has to do with radio and television and media coverage for the Houston area. This is something that Tony Cavender has talked about, and Phil Boudreau is interested in. We have a great history of media people. Of course, we have a number of media folks right here in our chapter. Is one project. We're talking about putting a marker out in front of a stadium. We've also, Bob McCann has offered a project about a visual board perhaps at Minute Maid Park, where you can see where all the ballparks in Houston have been for the championship teams and other teams. All these projects take energy and take a leader. So we need people who volunteer to help with those who want to put these projects together. SABR is now offering $2,500 for approved projects that we submit and they agree to. The deadline for the project for 2022 is January 1st. So if someone has a project they want to submit for next year, we need to get some kind of a presentation together to send to SABR. But there are lots of opportunities. We have lots of loyal members, but we do need folks to participate. It's much more fun to be involved in these in SABR activities than just to come to the meetings. So please volunteer. Call any of us, email any of us, and tell us what your skills are. We also need folks to determine speakers for the future. We've been fortunate to have a speaker at every meeting for the last 10 years. We've had a special speaker. We've had all kinds of ball players, managers, general managers, broadcasters, newspaper people, media people, and even, as some of you may remember, we had 2 Astro bat boys who spoke to us, and they're probably the most fun guys we had all the time. They introduced themselves by saying, guys, they're Texas A&M students who commuted every day to Minute Maid Park to be the bat boys. And they said, guys, we're glad to be here, but y'all know whatever goes on in the clubhouse, we can't repeat. And with that, they started telling us everything that went on in the club. So please feel free to volunteer your services. Mike, you want to talk about vintage baseball a little bit?
Yes, since I'm VP of Special Projects. Actually, this came up as a marketing idea to get more members for membership. So it comes under your heading, Chris. But so what we've decided to do, and we need chapter approval to do this, is have a vintage baseball exhibition. Now, I've talked to Tom Flores with the Katy Combine. He says, Mike, we got all these uniforms and nothing to do with them. Now, I've talked to Bob Blair, who is taking over the Houston Babies, and he was really into it today when I talked to him. In fact, when I think about it, he's good friends with Ted Harris, who used to be marketing director for the Astros for a long time. And Ted might make a speaker, just while I'm thinking about it. Also, Bob might be a member. Nobody's ever asked him to join SABR. He told me he went to the website today. He says, that looks like something I might enjoy. And then I also texted Bob Copas, who didn't call me back because he's in Costa Rica. But he did text me back and said he would be interested in getting the Barker Red Sox together. So the idea is there's also a National Vintage Baseball Association, which is located in Dearborn, Michigan. And evidently they have a World Series up there because Bob Blair said he always wanted to go up there and watch it. They also have a national convention in April. So I've joined the Houston Babies, paid a $35 associate fee. If you play less than 6 games a year, you can join to be an associate to get their rules and help in any way they can. So originally I was thinking we could do a league, but I think that might be a bit premature. But I've checked with Houston. There's ball fields available in Memorial Park. First come, first serve in March, and right now February is all clear. Nobody's got any fields for February reserved. So if we wanted to do a vintage baseball exhibition, we could have 3 teams play a round robin, advertise it, and take about 4 hours to do it. We'd need the team members out there, explaining the rules and telling people about SABR. I talked to Bill Brown today. He said he would be happy to help with it. best he could on social media. He thought we should go out there early and have members of the teams in uniforms to take pictures to help promote it when we do have it. I haven't reserved a date yet because I want to make sure there's chapter buy-in, but we also have that member on channel 11. We look to have a slow spring in baseball, maybe if they're not playing, we could get a lot of publicity on the sports channels because there's going to be a drought for sports news. So maybe they could even come out and cover it, and we could talk Dierker into coming out. He's got a house right there on Memorial. We could go have margaritas on his roof after the game. Ask Larry about that. But everybody so far has thought it's a good idea, and Bob Blair has played and coached for like the last 30 years with the Amateur Baseball Association, and he's already today, he talked with a guy named Joe Banachek, who is the Houston president and has about 40 teams, amateur teams that he controls. And so he was going to put this idea out to his 25 and over league, his 35 and over league, and his 45 and over league to try to get more players to come out so we'd have a full contingent for all three teams. We've got enough uniforms. Our problem has always been not getting enough players. And if we can get players out, most of the players are ball fans, and they would, a good percentage of them should convert to SABR members. And that's pretty much where we're at. So we'd like to have an exhibition tournament out, and I'm sure Greg has some social media and media contacts that could help us publicize that also. So that's a special event, and we need a top hat. I was thinking I could be the blind Tom, but I need one of those tall chairs to sit in because I couldn't stand up for 3 games. But if we can go into SABR for some money for that before the first of the year, what we want to do, that could be a special project that would be easy to put together, and maybe they'd give us enough money for a chair and a hat. Or
I can get you the hat, Mike.
And a bell. Need a chalkboard and a bell too. A good bell.
I got a bell.
So that's where I'm at. So I'm looking for feedback today on that idea. But that's what came out of our membership, our board meeting last week, was that we try to push the vintage baseball as in an effort to attract new members.
Thank you. Very good.
So any feedback from the peanut gallery there?
Sounds good. Yeah. This is very good.
We had to freeze in February for that.
Must
we
be
did.
growing up in New Jersey when we always had ice on the field in February.
Well, last
I think
February 16th, it got down to 0 for 4 days. So
yeah. We can reschedule. Mike sounds great. Thank you so much. You've done a lot of groundwork there. Okay. Chris, we got time for, Chris has a presentation he wants to make. Chris is kind of our research guy in many respects. He has lots of stuff that he gets involved with. And okay. And Greg, we haven't forgotten you.
I'm here.
Boss.
Let's turn this camera. Please. Everyone see my screen? What a wonderful. Okay. So you can get this one today. Okay. Several years ago, a long time ago, I went with a bunch of friends of mine to spring training in Florida, and we saw a game at the Twins complex where it seemed like every pitch, every hit was a double off, and there was a lot of them. So over the years, we've always kind of brought that back up and talked about what a great game that was. So recently we were talking about that for some reason, And the discussion went to, well, how many doubles has a team hit in a game? And it kind of went from there. So that's easy to find out. But how many doubles has a team hit in the game when all they hit was doubles, only doubles, no other hit? So we expanded that into what I call the most of one, which we look at each hit type, the most hits of each type when they only hit that kind. So usually play-by-play data from Retro Sheet. You guys see like the numbers last time. Looked through from 1915 to 2020, 175,000 games and 3.1 million hits. That's just the totals. So let's look at singles by one team. Now, when I was putting the data together before I had the answer, I had in my mind what the numbers were going to be, and I was way low. So singles by one team in a game, 22.
Wow.
Only singles. And when I saw that number, I said, that's got to be extra innings. And so it was the Dodgers, our friends from Los Angeles in 1988, and actually got it done in 8 innings because they were winning 13-5. So they did, this is kind of a showing the runs and the hits per inning, and they're all singles. Here's the partial box score. Some pretty famous names on there, and so the numbers are kind of maybe kind of hard to read. So I brought over our hitting stars today. The two top two guys in the lineup combined go 10 for 12 that day. The pitchers for the Reds, they used a number of them. Mr. Murphy only pitched 30 innings, he didn't get touched up any. But the fellow at the far end of the game, Dave Concepcion, the shortstop, he was 40 years old that year, and that was his only major league pitching appearance was in this game. So then we look at singles by both teams. That's when both teams only hit singles, no extra base hits. 27.
Wow.
This was in 1941 between the Reds and the Giants. And it's typical with baseball, nothing's ever really expected. The Giants get 11 hits and they're shut out. And the Reds get 16 hits and they score 9 runs. And it's all singles. There's kind of the box score. You can see some people who were in there. And then the top hitters, each with 3 hits that day. The fellow on the far end, Mike McCormick, keep him in mind. We'll see him again in another game. None of these players were stood out except for Mr. Bartell, who had an 18-year career, over 2,000 hits, and he played in 3 World Series. They lost all of them, but he hit 294 in the World Series, so pretty good player there. Now we get into doubles, which is where the whole thing started. Doubles by one team, when they only hit doubles, 9. And there's our other friends from Atlanta in 1998. And they scored 8 runs and won. They did that in 8 innings also. So that's how many doubles they got in the game. They didn't use too many pitchers. Maddox started that game for them. And these are all the players who had doubles that day.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at doubles, and there's the pitchers, just so we can get a record of did the pitching. Now you look at doubles by both teams. Where teams combined only hit doubles. 2 doubles in the game. It happened twice. The first time in 56, Chicago, they each had 1 hit. They each got a double. Chicago scored in the first inning, and that was the ball game, basically. Our stars today here, you got the guy who had the pitcher and the hitter who got the hits. And I saw this picture of Connie Johnson, and the first thing I saw was, he looks like Buck O'Neill.
Yeah.
He has that same kind of glow, and maybe it's the photography in his eyes, just looks like that kind of guy. Well, it turns out he played with Buck O'Neill in the 40s when he was a teenager, with Buck O'Neill and Satchel Paige with the Kansas City Monarchs, played in the Negro League World Series 2 years. Now, he was not a top player, but he was on those teams. And it happened again in 1964 with the Orioles again. Another 1-0 game, with each team getting 1 hit. Our stars of the day here, the pitcher for the Orioles, that was his first major league win that day. Now, he was not much of a pitcher. He ended up going 19 and 29. But another interesting little trivia. Here are the 4 guys who got the hits in those 2 games. And 3 of them were the team's backup catchers. So Nellie Fox played catch for one game, we took down in the Mississippi. Okay, triples. There's not been any games I can find where both teams combine for triples. So it's just one team. Two triples a game, no other kind of hits. Surprisingly, it happened 4 times. Now, the interesting part is in 3 of these games, the team 2 triples lost. One team won. And that was the Senators in 1951. They beat the Yankees 5-3 with only 2 hits. But they did it because the Yankees gave up 13 walks.
Oh, God.
So, and when they did the triples, they got it at the right time with players on base. That's how they scored their runs, mostly on the walks. So here's our hitting stars. There's Mr. McCormick back. He's in this game. His hitting's kind of not really only had 2 hits, but they timed him at the right part of the game. Now the pitcher for the starting pitcher for Yankees, Tommy Byrne. There's his pitching line today. He faced 17 batters and walked 8 of them. Now, this was what he did. He led the league in walks 3 years. And he led the league in hit batters 5 times. And he tied record for most walks in a game. Of course, it took him extra innings to do it, but he got 16 walks in a game. And for his career, he had more walks than strikeouts. Now, you would think he lasted 15 minutes. But he was a great hitter. Now, that's 601 at bats, basically 1 season of full-time hitting. He had 98 RBIs and 14 homers. He was used as a pinch hitter back in the day because he was such a good hitter. But he played 13 years in the American League. And he ended up with a winning record. And he won 16 games twice, 15 games once. And that was like the next last year of his career, he won 15 games.
What's
he was
his
an all-star.
name?
Tommy Byrne.
And then after he retired, he liked he wasn't from Wake Forest, North Carolina, but he liked lived there during some leadership going, progressing through the minors, and he became 2-term mayor of the city of Wake Forest. So he was wild in the minors too, but he was a hard thrower, so that's why he kept getting shots.
Lefty.
Okay, now home runs are like triples. There's no game where teams combine and just hit home runs. But the most home runs in a game, when you only hit homers, 6. 6 home runs in a game, no other kind of hit. And that was the Indians in 1989 against the Rangers. And they beat the Rangers 7-3. Joe Carter had 3 homers that day, all solo homers. Andy Allison, the catcher, is the only one who had a multiple run home run. And some really good pitchers against them. Charlie Huff and Kenny Rogers. Now, in this season, 1989, Charlie Huff led the league in home runs allowed with 28. And that was after Kenny Rogers' rookie year. I thought he was always a starter. He pitched 73 games in relief his rookie year. A couple of years later, he pitched 81 games as a reliever. It wasn't until about his 5th year that he became a full-time starter. So summarizing, there are the numbers for teams with only one type of hit in a game. When I started, I thought 2 for triples was the only one I got right. I thought I was like half of all these. And I had my daughter who knows a little bit about baseball, but not much. And her number about like mine. She thought like singles would be no more than a dozen because something would fall through. In that game, also in the 22 game, the Reds had 11 singles, but they also had 1 double. So there's like 34 hits in the game and 33 of them that day. So that's the most of 1 hit. If I have any questions, I might try to answer them.
Good job. Very good.
And the next one will be Bill Brown's request of trying to find out how good it is to give a guy a deep contract. So I've got the data, the original data. Now I've got to figure out how to present that in a way that is easy to understand. There are some big contracts out there. You look at them.
That's right. Including one that was signed yesterday, I guess. Justin Verlander.
$50 million.
That's all. Tony, that's just, I'm sorry for you.
It's like,
Oh my God. Oh.
Okay. Couple things. Joe, is it okay if we postpone your book report until next time?
Yeah, can I say one thing about Chris's
Sure.
thing? Ironically, the book report I was gonna give tonight, hey, Chris, you want it? Ironically, the book report, if you've never read this book, it's
There he is.
Closer.
it's a Dalco, the untold story of baseball's fastest pitcher. It's the biography about Steve Dalkowski. I just want to say one thing about walks that he said. Talking about people with a walk problem. Just some notes. When you said it, I looked it up on Baseball Reference. During Dalkowski spent his entire year in the minor leagues, but during his career, he struck out 1,396 batters in 995 innings, a rate of 12.63 per 9 innings. Unfortunately, he also walked 1,354, which is 12.25 per 9 innings. His first 5 seasons, he averaged 17 walks and 15 strikeouts per 9 innings. There you go. Talk about walks. I'll talk more about Dalco next month.
Okay.
How high did he get?
He came very close to making a big club, 62.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
He made a spring training, but
63.
thought it was amazing. I thought it was amazing because of how fast he threw the ball. I remember that.
I'll talk more about that.
Yes, sir. Okay. Before
He
we go
was
to
the
Chris-
first pitcher that they timed, but it took him like 15 minutes to get a ball over the plate. He was still throwing like 105, but he couldn't get a ball over the plate where they could clock it. I think that was in the mid late 50s they did that.
Well, there's no video of him ever pitching either. So,
Yeah.
but even those tests are kind of sketchy, Mike. They're not quite sure how accurate they are. So, good point.
But
though.
they were more accurate than he was.
Yes, he was.
Okay, before we get to trivia, I want to mention something that an article that came out that Tony Kavner sent to some of us called "Thrown Out at Home." It's a book about baseball, American baseball, and how America is moving away from the sport because of all the things that are taking place. I've had a number of comments from several people who got a copy of this article that's 7 pages long. And I know Tal Smith wants to talk about it, and Larry Dierker wants to talk about it, and Bill Brown and Greg Lucas. So it's kind of controversial because it talks about all the problems that baseball is having, the ownership's having, the commissioner, you name it, loyalty to the team, salaries, all these kind of things, viewership, how it is down. And so we thought we would try to discuss this at our January meeting, if that's okay with you.
Sir, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's very intriguing, very interesting. Our next meeting will be conducted by Joe as our president. And we do have a speaker lined up. Many of you have heard of him. His name is Robert Ford. He is the radio broadcaster for the Houston Astros for the past 4 or 5 years. Yeah, and he's an excellent speaker. Great. And he's going to be our guy.
No pressure about my first meeting.
No pressure. Well, not a bit. Okay. So I thought you'd like that. We're also going to have at that meeting, this is my last official announcement, is Bill Brown will be doing a book signing at that meeting of his brand new book that is being wildly successful. You don't know what it's called, Houston Astros Golden Era.
Well, that'll be great.
And he's having a lot of success, and he would love to sell it to anybody's interested in it, and he will autograph it.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
All three authors are going to be at the Houston Food Bank on December 18th. If you want to buy a copy and have all three of them signed. I think that's what Bill said.
I'm hopeful all three will be here also.
Oh, okay.
I'll, go to the food bank, that's fine, but I think they're coming to the meeting. Bill Boudreau, they're all members of SABR, so.
Okay.
January 17th. if my calendar is correct, 2022. Okay. Mr. Lucas has been a little bit under the weather. That's why he's there at home. But he has developed today's trivia contest. And so
I'll open it here so we have a
we
slideshow.
have a slideshow of it. Greg, as much as you're able to speak.
Oh, I can speak. I didn't want to contaminate anyone, to be honest, because my son contaminated my wife and I back on Thanksgiving. So we're staying home and until we're totally through this chest and nose cold thing. So that's why I'm here. But let me just say something about the trivia. First of all, it's a month late because last month I was supposed to do it. And, when it was the second week or whatever it was, the way the calendar was, I've totally forgot the meeting. But hopefully we'll make it up with this one. This is not a themed trivia question. This is 10 questions. There are a total of 20 points to be perfect, and it ranges all over the map. So let's just get started. Here's the first question. In the 1934 World Series, the Cardinals beat the Tigers. Who managed the two teams for 2 points? And what was unique about the pair other than both were future Hall of Famers? That's one more point.
I'm working.
So you name the two managers in the 1934 World Series, and what was unique about the pair other than both were future Hall of Famers? The second question is, what former Yankee outfielder was the only player to collect hits in all-star games in Yankee Stadium, the Polo Grounds, and Ebbets Field?
Oh, that's a good one.
Number 3, what major league park was once measured at 257 feet to the right field foul pole, but 483 feet to the deepest center field? 1 point. Number 4 is actually multiple choice because when you're dealing with numbers, multiple choice gives you a better chance, I think. How many regular season home runs did Roger Maris hit? 1, 275, 2, 410, 3, 336, or 4, 312, or 5, 298. One of them is correct. Regular season home runs only.
What was question 2?
Question 2 was, what former Yankee outfielder was the only player to collect hits in all-star games in Yankee Stadium, the Polo Grounds, and Ebbets Field?
Okay.
Number 5 is, what former Astro holds the team career on-base percentage leading average? 1 point. Former Astro holds the team career on-base percentage leading average. Number 6, what trio of brothers each were the first hitters ever at 3 different major league stadiums? And what stadiums did each of them christen? That's worth 6 points. Now, there's one clue. All 3 of the stadiums are either gone or no longer used for baseball. It's a trio of brothers. They were the first hitters ever at 3 different major league stadiums. That sounds confusing, but it's just simply probably hard. It's mostly just hard. A lot of guessing involved. Number 7, there is only one pitcher ever to win the Cy Young Award while pitching for a last place team. Name the pitcher and how many games he won. That's 2 points. I think most of you can get that one. Number 8, most know of Tom Paciorek and his brother John, who was 3 for 3 for Houston in his only major league appearance. But there was a third brother named Jim. He played 48 games with Milwaukee in 1987, but was a star in Japan for 6 seasons. He's in the record books there. Why? 1 point. Why is Jim Paciorek in the record books in Japan? Number 9. The Chicago Cubs once tried a college of coaches to rotate as manager of the club between 1961 and 65. Of the original 8, One later became a manager in Houston. Who? And number 10, name 3 Baseball Hall of Fame players who had no post-career life. They died while still active.
Repeat that.
Name 3 Baseball Hall of Fame players who had no post-career life. They died while active. 3 members of the Hall of Fame who played their final game and died.
One's obvious.
One of them's obvious, I think, and the other 2, not so.
Okay.
And if you need any of those repeated, just let me know if there's something.
I look like white judging bench.
So that good looking guy throwing out the pitch.
That was McCroskey at first, but that's not how you do vintage baseball. Those are our uniforms, aren't they?
Yes, that's it. Well, Susan, who has 2 teams?
All right, lay it on us.
All right. Here's number 1. In the 1934 World Series, the Cardinals beat the Tigers. Who managed the 2 teams? Well, the 2 managers were Mickey Cochran and Frankie Frisch.
Got that one.
Okay. And what was special about them? In that series, they were the last 2 player managers to face off in a World Series.
Oh.
Because they both were still playing. Number 2, what former Yankee outfielder, the only player to collect hits in all-star games in Yankee Stadium, the Polo Grounds in Ebbets Field?
Hank
You
Bell.
could have maybe guessed this one. What do you think?
Hank Bell.
That's Joe DiMaggio. Joe DiMaggio.
Oh, I got one. Yay.
Now, what major league park, you've got to get this one, was once measured at 257 feet to the right field foul pole, but 483 feet deepest center field?
Polo Grounds.
That is the Polo Grounds, 279 to left field. And that was my gimme one, I hope. Now, number 4, how many career home runs in the regular season did Roger Maris hit?
298.
298 total.
336.
Those of you who had 275 are correct.
Oh.
He, of course, comes up every year when people are talking about the Hall of Fame, but it was 275.
Okay.
Now, here's what former Astro holds the team career on-base percentage leading average.
Bagwell.
Good guess.
Jose Cruz.
Who's you?
Bergman.
Berkman, the guy that continually gets gypped in all or Hall of Fame consideration. He doesn't even get mentioned now, even as a possible for the future. And he hit 410. His on-base percentage as an Astro was 410. That edges out Bagwell, who was also over 400. Berkman's career 406, which includes his Yankees and Cardinal time, is 48th all time. Bagwell at 408 was all with the Astros, ranks 45th. Ted Williams, 482 is the all-time leader. Babe Ruth at 474 is second. Barry Bonds is 7th with 443, and the only player who played after the 1960s ranked in the top 15. So it's kind of a lost art for most players. But Berkman, a 410, a 408 career on-base percentage, and he doesn't even get consideration for stuff. All right, number 6. What trio of brothers each were the first hitters at 3 different major league stadiums, and in what stadium? If anyone gets all 6 points on this, you are geniuses.
The Lou brothers.
Hello.
Well, you got the brothers right. You got the brothers.
Matty in Montreal.
Montreal.
Felipe in Candlestick.
Well, so
I
far
mean,
you're wrong.
Jesus in Montreal. And Felipe
no, well,
in Candlestick.
no, you got the stadiums all wrong. You got the 3 brothers right. Felipe Alou, playing for Atlanta, was the first hitter at Bush Memorial Stadium in St. Louis.
Wow, that is.
Jesus Alou, playing for Houston, was the first hitter at San Diego Stadium. And Matty Alou of Pittsburgh was the first hitter in Atlantic County Stadium. That's
I got
called
that.
deep
Oh, yeah.
trivia. So if you got the names right, that's 3 points. You just don't get the other 3. There is only one pitcher ever to win the Cy Young Award. We're pitching for a last place team. Now you got to all know this one. Maybe not how many games he won, but let's see.
Carlton.
27.
That is correct. Steve Carlton with 27, and the team was only 59 and 97 overall. He won 46% of the team's victories. That was Carlton. Number 8, most know Tom Paciorek and his brother John. John, of course, 3 for 3 for Houston. But how about Jim? What was he famous for in Milwaukee, or not in Milwaukee, in Japan? He did something, and he's in the record book in Japan.
Oh. Most home runs in a game?
No, the
Number
answer
doubles.
is he was the 1990 Central League batting champ with the Tayo Whales at 326. He was also a 3-time leader in hits, a 2-time All-Star, 1-time Gold Glove winner, and he hit 315 in his Japan pro career. And most people don't even know there was a third brother. We know Tom, and certainly Houston people know John, but Jim, sort of unknown, but he was successful. Number 9, the Chicago Cubs tried a college of coaches. Of the original 8, one of them ended up managing in Houston. Who was that?
Lumen Harris.
Harris?
I haven't heard the right answer yet. The answer was Harry Kraft.
Oh, my.
There were ultimately 12 in the rotation, but only 6 ever held the head coach's job. Vidi Himsel, Luke Klein, Elvin Tappy, Charlie Metro, Bob Kennedy, and Kraft. And now the last question. If you can get all 3 points, name 3 Baseball Hall of Fame players who had no post-career life. In other words,
Herman Munson.
did, and so did theirs. They died while still active.
Herman Munson, Clemente.
He's not Hall of Fame. He's not Hall of Fame. Roberto Clemente.
Correct.
Was he still active?
Well, Manny was right. The second one, I think, the clue is train Niagara River.
Yeah, he fell.
Oh, yeah.
Ed Delahanty.
Delahanty.
Yeah, and the third one was he died of an illness. Addie Joss, great pitcher. Addie Joss. He died of an illness during the off season, and they were all Hall of Famers. So total up your stuff, and 20 is the most you can get. And who's got the highest number?
I got Greg. What was the answer to number 8 again?
Number 8 is Jim Paciorek won a batting title in Japan for the Tayo Whales in the Central League.
Okay.
That was what put him in the record books.
That's a good number. That'd be very good enough. I got 4.
I got 5.
Okay.
Anybody more than 5?
Yes.
7.
Tony? Tony still counts.
I really did. I did well.
You, Joe.
1, 2.
I got another number. How about you? What'd you get? That's
That's what I got.
3. That's good. You got 9?
9's top so far then.
We need an audit. We need an audit. We need an audit. What do you want? Oh, for no history, writing the trivia contest. All right, it's 7 or 9, Tony. Which one?
I think I got 9. I've got Nicky Cochran brains. So you couldn't figure out what we did. Hologram.
Yeah.
Well, you got 2 right on Mickey, and if you got the managers right, that was worth 2 points.
I got the Blue Brothers. That's 3. I couldn't get with. Jim Carver. I got 2 points there. And I think I had Delahanty, one of those guys.
You had Clemente and Delahanty, so
I
that's
did
2
not
out of
have
3.
Clemente. I had Clemente and Delahanty.
So what's your
I thought the
total?
other one- Let me see. 1, 2, 3.
That was 6.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think let me see, 2 for Cochran and Brady. 1 for the Polo Grounds, that's 3. 3 points for 3 Alou brothers. Is that correct? 2
6,
points for Steve Carlton.
7.
and one for Dillahunty.
8.
You got 8. So,
Okay.
so 9 is the winner.
Who had
Yeah,
9?
Carl Owens has 7. Hey, Herb. How you
Okay.
doing, buddy?
Well,
How many did you get, John Lloyd?
I got 8.
Oh, he's kind of quiet there. Oh, we got a tie?
I thought 9 was the winner.
I thought
I thought I
somebody
had
said.
9, but I just.
He back down. He
Oh, so it's time for 8.
audited, John. He was audited.
Okay, then you got to flip. You got to flip a coin to decide which one gets the honor of doing this next month.
I'll give Tony the honor.
Whoever has been the longest since writing one. Whoever wrote the last one, the other guy should get it the last time.
That's
they
good.
did it.
That's a good tiebreaker. Good point.
Yeah, I think John was a little more recent.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Tony's a man.
All right. Well, very good. Very good. I'm sorry it wasn't a little easier, but I was. I guess I didn't throw enough toss-ins this time. But hey, that's what you get for giving me an extra month because I forgot to show up last month.
Greg, that was great. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll come back to you again, Greg. Don't
Okay.
fail.
Very good.
Marcia, you have any comments you want to make? Marcia, you're muted.
He's heard enough.
She's busy writing. You got it down word for word?
Like court reporter. Play it back to us.
Can't hear you.
I have something to say.
Oh, no. No. Surprise.
Yeah.
Go.
Thank you, Bob, for doing this for so long.
Yeah. Good
You've
point.
done a great job.
Good point.
We got one of the top chapters in the nation. No pressure, Joe.
Oh, and by the way, they are coming after you if you haven't renewed because I got. I made a complaint to them, the national people, because I had not gotten mailing because I don't do stuff if I can avoid it online, and I wanted a mailing, and they got back to me and they said, here, we'll just go to this site and you can print it out and send it to us, and I did last week, and then today, or was it yesterday, I got a call from somebody wondering why I hadn't renewed yet, and I told them that I did. I was slow because I hadn't received anything in the mail because. I'm sorry, maybe it's because it's our age group, but there are just too many hackers, too many people stealing and in identity theft. And I just don't do that unless I absolutely have to. And you don't have to, but I don't know whether or not they're going to send you the thing in the mail automatically anymore. But I'm renewed, but so be aware of it. That the national people were tracking down people that weren't renewed yet. So.
Well, how about Merry Christmas?
Yes, Merry Christmas to everybody.
Merry Christmas season for readings.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas. Herb, you ready? You want
Thank you for having me here too, everybody. I just wanted to say thanks.
That was great.
Thank you,
presentation.
Jeff.
That was wonderful. That was a
off,
great,
okay?
that was
That's a lot of
one of our
fun.
best presented remotely that we've had.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, I appreciate it a lot.
Thanks.
Okay, you all have a good holiday too. All right,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guess so.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Anything else we need to talk about? Okay,
Thank you, Lord.
so we'll see y'all next year.
Yes, yes.
Love the presentation. All right, thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, a little early. Thanks for coming, Sam. Thanks, Sam.